Hi, good evening. My name is Mark Vargas, host of Mark My Words, heard every Sunday night on AM 560 The Answer. I'm also the communications director for DeVore for Attorney General. And we're going to have a discussion tonight, and we're going to take your comments, and we're going to be focusing exclusively on the Safety Act. And joining me live here this evening is Republican nominee for Attorney General Tom DeVore and the founder of Chi-Town Crime Chasers, Justin. Tom and Justin, thank you for joining us tonight.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
And Tyrone Muhammad, founder of Ex-Cons for Community and Social Change, will also be joining us here later this evening. But Tom, I want to kick this off because something very fascinating that you tweeted, I believe it was yesterday, and I think this goes to the growing theme of the impact of the rising crime, particularly here in Chicago. Progressive Insurance put out a statement to their agents related specifically to the rise in carjackings here in Chicago. You know, the failure of the Democrats to really address this crime is having real consequences, particularly on the consumers and those insured. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening here?
Certainly. One of the issues that we've been seeing in the city of Chicago, and it started about 3 years ago, and I've got a chart up here that people can take a look at. It started right after, Kim Foxx and Lori Lightfoot began their most recent term, is carjackings has become more prevalent in the city and the surrounding area. And you can see with the chart up on the screen that from 2019 and even the years prior to that, I'm sorry, I'm looking over at the screen when I'm looking at the chart. I have it here in front of me too. There was, several hundred a year going back a long time. And then in 2020, we see a huge skyrocket. And now for the last 2 years, 2021, 2022, projected, we're pushing 2,000 carjackings per year in the city of Chicago. And so, we can talk about why that might be. Certainly Kim Foxx's reluctance to take crime seriously and to prosecute seriously, the provisions of the Safety Act that we'll talk about, they have an impact on that. I did a boat tour a few months ago, and the young man that was giving that tour, I may have told you guys before, we were having that conversation. And I said, why do you think crime increases in the Chicago area? He didn't know who I was. He didn't know why I was asking. We were just, conversing. And he said, well, when those who might be inclined to commit crimes begin to understand that there's less significant consequences for committing them, that they might be more inclined to do that. Another thing that we talked about is how there is, and the current attorney general's even talked about the organized crime that's going on in our state and in the city of Chicago. When the cost of doing business for organized crime goes down, you're going to see the increases in crime. So yesterday, I have an article here, and we posted it yesterday. I've got a copy. Progressive Insurance put out an internal memo that I was able to get my hands on. And what Progressive Insurance has advised all of their insurance agents is that within certain zip codes in the surrounding area of Chicago, and for certain specific vehicles, which are more likely to be carjacked, that they're going to become ineligible to be insured by Progressive. Because the statistics show that of the 2,000 cars annually now that are being carjacked in the city of Chicago, less than 10% of them are ever recovered. And so that leaves some 1,800 vehicles, or approximately 15 a month, that insurance companies are having to pay for. And so Progressive, again, is taking the position that they are going to start denying coverage for certain vehicles in certain areas. And again, it's a result of what we're seeing with the crime increasing and the soft crime approach that's being taken by Kim Foxx and Cook County. That's a product. This is a real consequence that's starting to play out.
Tom, just to follow up on that, and again, I don't know the rules or the laws, but does does someone who's insured, do they have a case for discrimination? It's like, I live here in Chicago. I can't change my address. I need my vehicle. There's all sorts of traffic that going back and forth to work or wherever I might need to go. Is there a case for sort of discrimination because of where I live and factors outside of my control, the failure of my political leader to address crime? Now I can't get my car insured. Is there a case for that?
There's not necessarily a clear-cut issue there. When we talk about cases for discrimination against political agents that we could argue are responsible for this, it really comes down a lot to do with politics, and that if the people continue to elect these folks and they make these decisions which are having these significant adverse impacts on the citizens, then unelect them. I mean, that's the first and foremost thing. So to talk about whether there's legal remedies or not for individual citizens, it's complex beyond any brief conversation we can have here. But ultimately, the remedy is to quit electing these people, and it'll get taken care of.
No, that's a good point. Justin, you've got, I don't know how you stay so sane, my friend, because your job is literally to go to the many crime scenes that are occurring on a daily basis here in Chicago and provide live coverage of this. As we get ready for the Safety Act to go into effect on January 1st, tell us what are sort of the common denominator that you're seeing at some of these scenes that you're at and filming live?
Yes. Unfortunately, I have a high feeling that I'm going to be starting January 1st. I'm probably it's going to be a lot more crime scenes than I've been going to the last couple of months. And it's a conversation that's we've been having ever since the Safety Act came into light, and the community is some of them are afraid. They believe that it's definitely going to be. We already seeing an increase of crime and shooting crimes already in Chicago, and next year we're going to unfortunately see more. In the community, they want answers.
Justin, I think this is interesting, and I'm not sure a lot of residents realize this, but the police, the scanners that you use to go to a crime scene, that community officers use to be able to, for example, on college campuses, to figure out what's happening in their community, to alert their constituency, those are getting jammed now so that you're not able to catch what's happening in real time of the crime or the scenes or shootings. Tell us a bit about that.
Correct. Yeah. Unfortunately, now it's to the point that every zone on the scanner that has been encrypted, which means that we won't be able to hear real time calls over the scanner, or it'll be a 45 minutes to an hour delay. And so now that's going to make it more harder for me and my partner to find out when these shootings happen, because a lot of times when we post these shootings, we don't post it exactly when it happens. A lot of these shootings we post, it happened an hour ago, and that's because we had to wait to get more. We had to dig in deeper to get more updates and details and information. And unfortunately, the city of Chicago has been encrypting for the last couple of months, zone by zone, that nobody won't be able to hear in real time or at all what's going on in the city.
Tom, yesterday we learned that State Senator Darren Bailey, a Republican nominee for governor, received a very serious and credible threat that was called into his Senate office at the state capitol. And under the Safety Act, can you tell us about this individual who they've arrested and he's now in custody? Can you tell us, all of us, because these threats are real, whether you're a sitting state senator or you're the Republican nominee for governor or the Republican nominee for attorney general, everyday people like us, what would happen under the Safety Act to this sick individual that called in this threat to Senator Bailey and to his family?
I haven't seen, because it hasn't been published yet to my knowledge, what the actual charge that he has been charged with. I know he's been charged. I don't know exactly what that crime is, but the question will be under the Safety Act of whether that crime that he's been charged of is something that allows detention or doesn't allow detention under the new statute. So if it is in fact a crime for which detention is possible, then this man would go in front of a judge, and a judge would make a decision about potentially detaining him before trial. If it's not a crime for which detention is possible, because it doesn't fall within the statutory provisions, then this person would be released with a promise to return. Again, it depends specifically on the crime that's been accused of. And as of today, I'm not sure exactly what that crime was.
Tom, I think for most people, and I'll throw myself into this category, it's not necessarily clear because the Attorney General's race is not a race that we particularly follow. But this year we are, because of what's happening with the rise in crime, the mandate madness, the fact that Kwame Raoul seems to rubber stamp everything that Governor Pritzker and the legislature puts forward and Governor Pritzker subsequently signs. What real powers can the Attorney General's office exercise under a Tom DeVore administration to do a couple of things? Number one, really get a handle on this rising crime that's not just in Chicago anymore. It's in the suburbs and it's all over our state. And number two, to put an end to this mandate madness. What powers are there available to you as the Attorney General of Illinois to be able to address these two very big issues this year?
Let's talk about the mandate issue first. Governor Pritzker for the last almost 3 years now has been issuing executive mandates almost at will. And it's been tantamount to him writing laws through these executive orders. And it has nothing to do with whether or not what he was trying to accomplish practically might have been wise or unwise, good or bad. Many people will get caught up in, were the mask mandates necessary? Did it keep anybody safe or not safe? Or the vaccinations or the business closures? They're starting to look at the efficacy of those to talk about whether they liked him or disliked him. And what gets lost in that conversation is that the governor himself doesn't have the power to be creating laws because our foundational principles don't allow that. What the Attorney General should have done is actually said to the governor, you can't be issuing these mandates this way to the extent that you believe that these policies are beneficial to keep people safe. You need to go to the legislature and ask the legislature to craft laws and policies that support his ideas. Now, we might be willing to give the governor some amount of leeway under the law for a very brief amount of time right after March of 2020, whether it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve or 30 days, etc. At some point in time, it was incumbent upon the governor to quit trying to rule over people with executive power and actually use our legislature the way that it's supposed to be done. The Attorney General could have made that happen, but Attorney General Raoul was more interested in just doing whatever Governor Pritzker told him to do, because again, the governor is his biggest financial contributor, so that's just life. But that's where the Attorney General failed. He should have told the governor, go to the legislature, let them pass some laws. That would have been fine. So that's where I would have been, as in my administration would have insisted that the governor quit issuing mandates and ask the legislature to pass some laws. As to the SAFETY Act and to crime in general, the SAFETY Act, there's no doubt about that the way that it was adopted was unconstitutional. The way they shoved it through the legislature at 3 o'clock in the morning when everybody was asleep except for our senators and House members, that it wasn't vetted on the House of the General Assembly so the people could watch. There's many issues to why it was unconstitutional. Kwame Raoul absolutely should have defended the people and insisted that that law be passed and go through the legislature properly. But if it would have went through the way the law requires, it probably wouldn't have passed. So they skirt-tailed the rules to get it passed. The Attorney General could have stopped that, and he should have stopped that. And now that he didn't, you have almost 60 states' attorneys statewide who have sued the governor and the General Assembly, really doing the Attorney General's job is what those states' attorneys are doing.
Justin, going back to you, because again, you've got an incredibly difficult job of going to all of these crime scenes, and again, going live on your Facebook so that all of us are able to see what's happening in real time. What kind of support is there for these families, or that you can see? What kind of support is there for these families of violent crime victims, if any at all? What's been your experience?
A lot of times, a lot of these, especially families that's lost loved ones to gun violence, some of them can't afford any type of funeral arrangements or costs or anything, or they still be suffering even after their thing. And there's not, I don't see that too much support to provide for those families to help what they're going through and the loss of their loved ones. And I think that it's important for them to receive these supports so everybody can know what's the word I'm trying to say, so that everybody can not just in one community, but all communities. Everybody needs to have that support, especially from the government, from the city, and it needs to be some type of funding towards these families to help them go through this terrible time.
Justin, I think you're bringing up a point that many may not even realize, is that these families who have lost a loved one, a child, a sibling, a son or a daughter, that they don't have the financial means to actually give them a proper burial.
Correct.
I think that is disgusting that these families are left trying to figure out how to give their loved ones a proper goodbye. I'm getting to a point, but in your estimation over the last year, how many crime scenes, you don't have to be an exact number, but how many crime scenes do you think you've covered?
I would say, wow, within the last couple of months, probably since I started this back in May, I would possibly estimate between 50 to 75 scenes within the last couple of months.
And my question for that is 50 to 75. How many of those have you seen our Attorney General, Kwame Raoul? How many of those scenes have you seen our Governor Pritzker? And how many of those scenes have you seen Mayor Lightfoot, the mayor?
None at all. To be honest, actually one scene I remember just seeing Mayor Lightfoot was where the 14 people were shot on Halloween night. That's probably the only scene I've seen her at, but other than any other government officials, or I have not seen nobody at the scenes.
Tom, I want to ask, is there something that the Attorney General's office under a Tom DeVore administration, is there something that the Attorney General's office could do to help support these families? And to Justin's point, they don't even have the money to give their loved one a proper burial. Are you aware of there some sort of funding, or do you have jurisdiction to provide some funding for some of these families?
No, I don't think so. The funding issues like that, would be beyond the Attorney General's office. It'd be something that the legislature would have to address, which is where most issues have to be addressed. But this issue of all of the crime scenes that Justin is talking about, many of those crimes go unsolved, and they go unsolved for a lot of reasons. But one of them is that people are scared to get involved, right? Who's going to come, and Justin can probably speak to this more than any of us, but who's going to come forward and subject themselves to any amount of risk unless they have some confidence that the criminal justice system is going to protect them and to prosecute that crime? And to the extent they don't, and Justin, I'd ask you to speak on this, to the extent that they don't have that confidence, they're never going to step up. And I use this most recent event, this tragedy in Garfield, $15,000 reward. Well, okay, that sounds fine and dandy, but if these folks are scared for their lives, are they really going to come forward and help? And until such time as there's some community involvement, because they have some confidence that their families are going to be protected and that those who would commit these heinous crimes are going to be brought to justice, they're not going to help. And so that really needs to be a big part of that. But Justin, I'd be interested to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, continue with, especially with the Safety Act going on, and a lot of these offenders are supposed to be released and other things. It's going to bring more fear upon the community, because now the community is really not going to want to talk. And I agree, there is not enough protection. And every time we see a crime or something happen, and you always hear people say, if you see something, speak up or say something. But it is hard for a lot of these people, and they do witness these things, but they don't want to talk. Everybody know each other, and it's a huge risk. And I think that
Justin, do you think they would be inclined to help their communities if they had some confidence that they're protected and that actually these criminals would be brought to justice?
oh, most definitely. And even when they talk, because as soon as they talk, I trust it's going to be justice served. As soon as they talk, because everybody sees something, they know something, even got videos that they haven't even shared around. But it's definitely there will be a lot of people speaking up if they feel more protected, especially in these Black communities.
Yeah, and I just saw a comment over here. It looks like TC Monet says they have no protection. I certainly understand that, and I get it. And to the extent that they feel vulnerable, they're not going to speak up. And so I don't know, and I don't see that Kim Foxx, Lori Lightfoot, Governor Pritzker, or Kwame Raoul have done anything. And if they have, I would challenge somebody listening to this to educate us. I've not seen any of them do anything that is giving the community any confidence that if they participate and help, that people will be held accountable. I've not seen it. And if someone else has seen it, I'd be interested to hear about it.
And then going on with that point, I've seen also Kim Foxx's office. They have the Chicago police do catch some of these criminals, some of these murderers or shooters, but due to lack of evidence, Kim Foxx's office releases them. And some of these people that Chicago police caught is because some people have spoken up and they seen something and they went to the police about it. And based off of their evidence and testimony, they had enough probable cause to arrest that person. But according to Kim Foxx's office, they released some of them back on the street. So now these families are terrified, left in these communities terrified.
Justin, I wanted to ask you too. I just saw a comment roll through a while ago. You had mentioned that you saw Mayor Lightfoot at the Garfield tragedy that we just had here on Halloween evening, and someone commented, "Yeah, she showed up because the media was actually giving that some coverage." I mean, I've talked to you before about time in and time out where you're covering these events, and we don't see those events in the media anywhere. And then you don't hear about the mayor or the governor or Kwame or Kim. Do you think that the mayor showed up at that event merely because she thought it was going to give her some political coverage because the media was paying a little bit of attention?
Most definitely, especially when it's around election time for the city. Yeah, they're going to act like they care and whatever, but that's only in front of media. But what about behind closed doors? What if there was no cameras there? Where are you at where these families are? They're hurting. The community is paralyzed from the gun violence, and everybody is looking up. They point the fingers at the police. Police can't do everything, so everybody's looking at Mayor Lightfoot. She controls this city. So where's the support and the help and the financial help that needs to be given to these communities? And it's sad because I'm starting to see that the city is caring less and less, and they're starting to cover up a lot of these crimes that's going on. That's why most of these encryptions has been going on. And then every Monday, I guess Superintendent David Brown, they have these press conferences saying crime is down, but we're not seeing that. I'm not seeing crime down. I'm seeing that increased each and every day. And now I'm seeing more of a cover up involving Chicago police with other evidence that I have. So it's sad, and I believe that something needs to be done, or it needs to be new leadership that's going to care for this city and care for these communities.
Well, I appreciate hearing you say that, and I'm glad you and I haven't talked in a few days. I'm glad you brought this issue up to me about them trying to suppress the information that you get timely to go do what you're doing. They're probably doing that because of men like you that are working as hard as you are. So when I'm Attorney General, I assure you, sir, somebody's going to answer the question on why they're trying to block that information from being disclosed like you've been accustomed to getting. I don't have any tolerance for that. So whatever they're doing, it better be legal, or otherwise I'll take care of it, because you do a great service to the people of those communities, and I appreciate it.
I thank you, Tom, because what the community is looking for is really an answer, and the answer coming from higher up. What is our higher up officials are going to do about this? because we're tired. Every day we're tired of our kids. We're losing our kids. We're losing women. Last couple of weeks has been a lot of women getting killed, and we also been seeing a lot of children getting shot on Halloween. There was a few children shot during that mass shooting. So where's the response from the city and the state? That's what the city, the communities are asking and looking for.
You know, Justin, you and I have talked about that on occasion, Tyrone as well, talking about, you know, and we don't just talk about the last month or two or the last year even, about how there's been a complete disregard for investing in these communities, right? They're not investing doing anything to bring any business or socioeconomic, you know, any opportunities to these communities. And all the politicians do, and you and I talk about it, Justin, from both parties. This is not necessarily a Democrat or Republican thing. From both parties, completely abandoned doing anything in these communities to help really address some of these issues that are causing the crime, which is, to me, you have to deal with that. We can't just talk about how are we going to deal with crime from a law enforcement perspective, even though we understand that's important. How do we deal with these issues of crime to actually alleviate them from continuing to occur? You and I agree. That's the real conversation. And sadly, again, and anybody that's listening can correct us or correct me if I'm wrong, I don't see anybody talking about that. I don't see Governor Pritzker talking about it. I don't hear Kwame Raoul talking about it. I don't hear Mayor Lightfoot. I don't hear Kim Foxx. And I don't hear the legislature talking about it. They give lip service to it, but they don't really do anything. Governor Pritzker has been in power as governor for 3 years. He has a super majority in the legislature. He can pass any law he wants. Has he crafted any legislation, to your knowledge, Justin, to help the Black community prosper in order to have a better community and opportunity for their children? Do you know of anything?
Not that I've seen, no.
Justin, I wanted to ask you, you've been to a lot of scenes. Is there, and I think it's important for those watching and listening who may not have been to a crime scene here in Chicago before, is there one of these instances, these crime scenes that stick out in your mind, and tell us why?
Yes, it's a couple of them. The ones that usually gets me is ones that where the victim is deceased and their body is still on scene. And usually sometimes I get to the scene quick before the ambulance get there, and you can still see that body still there. But the ones that stands out to me the most is when there's children involved, and death involving the children. One specific one was just last week, I believe, where there was an 8-year-old boy shot and killed on 35th and Rose in Lawless Gardens. It's sad that our children, we have a huge gun problem in Chicago, and it's real easy to get a gun. A lot of these kids out here, they have guns. They bring them in these homes, and I've been encouraging these parents to monitor y'all children and check their rooms and talk to them, because they're just walking around with guns. They're bringing it to school. They're bringing it in homes. That it's just they got to keep it with them, and some of them be playing with it. And unfortunately, in that incident with the 8-year-old boy, his older brother, a teenager, was playing with the gun and then went off and shot his little brother in the head. And unfortunately, the little boy passed away. So that's one scene right there that it was hard to just be. It happened inside the building, but it's just standing outside the building. It's just like, it just gets to me. It's sad and it breaks my heart.
Tom,
Yes, sir.
I've participated in a press conference with about a dozen families, and I know there's some watching live here tonight and you touched on this a little bit, where the cases of their loved ones are unsolved, and it's a manpower issue. There's a variety of issues, but we know that responsibility really rests on State's Attorney Kim Foxx. But there's got to be another answer to that, another solution. What role could the Attorney General's office under your administration, what role could you play to help send a clear message to these criminals who are getting away with murder, literally and figuratively, and very few of them are being held accountable And we've got dozens and dozens and dozens of families whose violent killers of their loved ones are still walking out on the streets. What message would you have for these violent crime families of violent crime victims under a DeVore administration?
Certainly. You know, there are provisions under the law in Illinois that allows an attorney general, if he or she deems necessary, to come into a county and actually prosecute crimes that the state's attorney is not prosecuting. Okay, there's some case law on that. The attorney general and I quibbled about it briefly, but ultimately the attorney general's office has that ability. If the state's attorney says, I'm not going to prosecute, there's a way to accomplish that. But what it really speaks to, Mark, is to be able to resolve these crimes that are going unsolved. We've talked about it here, but I need to make sure to repeat it. It's really going to be an effort of everyone. It's going to be law enforcement doing their part. It's going to be the state's attorney or the attorney general, if necessary, doing their part. It's also going to be the community participating, doing their part. The one that has the most skin in that game is the community. They're the ones in it that have the most to gain and the most to lose. So in order to get them to participate, they are going to have to be convinced that law enforcement is going to do their part and that the attorney, whether it's the attorney general or the state's attorney, will do their part. And until that whole system is going to work together, we're going to struggle resolving these crimes for these families who are still suffering. I can tell you as the attorney general, I promise you that my part is going to be done. I will make sure to give, to the best of my abilities, the assurances to the community and to law enforcement that the prosecutorial provisions will absolutely be taken care of. And to the extent I got to go in there and get sideways with Kim Foxx, I have no problem doing that. I am not going to acquiesce like Kwame Raoul has done to what Kim Foxx has been doing in the dereliction of her duty. I will walk right in that building myself and have a little conversation with her, and her and I will be going and arguing in the court about her failure to do her job, which includes giving the confidence to the community and to law enforcement that she's there to do the right thing to promote justice. That's what I can do, Mark.
Tom, what message do you have for a business owner in Chicago that as the Safety Act goes into effect on January 1, what can everyday residents do, and what could businesses do to protect themselves? Because we know, no doubt, there's going to be an increase in crime come January 1st. What can everybody do collectively to stay safer?
You know, that's a $1 million question, Mark. There's no magic wand or no grand advice that I can provide of what individuals should do, other than be more cautious of their surroundings, pay attention to where they're at, who they're with, etc. You know, that's going to be important for your businesses, you know, making sure that everything's locked and secured, cameras, etc. So, you know, this law that's coming into effect on January 1st, absent it being, repealed either through the court, that the legislature is not going to do anything. And I can talk about what their options are here in a second. Unless a judge is going to suspend or invalidate this law between now and January 1st, you know, it's going to go into effect. There's no law like this in the history of the United States, or even in the United States right now. So to really be able to give an articulate piece of advice to people, none of the state's attorneys nor I can adequately do that, because we're facing the unknown, which is one of the most scariest propositions.
Justin, first of all, I wanted to ask, because I know that, and Tom, I know that you're aware of this as well. Justin's always sadly, he's always covering a crime scene. But in one of these crime scenes, he realized that they were family members. And so, Justin, I wanted to ask you, this covering a scene turned very personal for you. I wanted to ask, how are they doing?
Yes. Well, first off, for those who didn't know, sorry, what happened about a month ago on a Sunday evening, there was, in my old neighborhood, Rogers Park, there was a shooting involving my cousin and his son. And My cousin was shot in the arm and hand twice, and his son unfortunately was shot in the head. I reported that night. Didn't even realize that it was my cousin until the next day. I'm listening to the radio and they said the last name, and I said that last name, that's my cousin's last name. And then I called around and found out it was them. So yeah, after that, a couple of days, my older cousin, he's been recovering, doing good physically, but mentally he wasn't. His son was still on life support, fighting for his life at Lourdes Children's Hospital, and a few days later, unfortunately, he's passed away. Right now, that was about a month ago. I haven't really spoke too much to my cousin, but as from the last thing I've heard, he's still hurt, but he's trying to manage, and the family's trying to hang in there right now.
My goodness, I'm so sorry, Justin. How old was that little boy, and what was his name?
He was 5 years old. His name was Devin McGregor.
Devin. Well, God bless Devin, and may he rest in peace. And Tom, this is why it's so important that we need you as Attorney General. We need Darren as governor, because under Democratic leadership, we're going to be bearing more children. We're going to be bearing more brothers and sisters and moms and dads. This really hits home for all of us. Tom, we hear about Governor Pritzker in the debate when he couldn't answer what would he repeal or change or amend in the Safety Act. Kwame Raoul, the same thing. He's been real fidgety when asked, why don't they want to answer the simple question, what would you change? And what should their answer be?
Of course. Well, the reason that, again, we're 5 days now, Mark, before an election, and they started getting asked these questions 2 or 3 weeks ago. If they were to answer the question of what would they change, that's an acknowledgement that those problems exist. It's a specific acknowledgement. And they are so concerned that negative publicity would cause them problems in their reelection efforts that they won't just be honest with the people and say, this is what we think about this. You get the generalized from the governor, yeah, we probably ought to clean that up, but we do that all the time with legislation. We cleaned it up. It's not necessarily true. It happens sometimes, but not to this extent. Kwame Raoul going, oh yeah, I've kind of got some problems with this cash bond component, won't really speak to it. So again, they're not speaking to it, Mark, because they don't want to have to actually acknowledge to the people of Illinois that these problems are there. Because again, if they had any competency level at all and they weren't biased from a political perspective, they would have raised these issues back in February of 2021 when this law passed. Now, as to what can be done, the state's attorneys that have filed this case, again, almost 60 of our 102 state's attorneys right now, they have argued that the law has to be repealed in its totality. Not that you can, have an amendment here or an amendment there, because the law, when it was passed in such an unconstitutional way. And again, for the people of the state that are listening, it went through at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning when everybody was asleep with all kinds of procedural issues. And those cannot be fixed with an amendment. The only way that our laws say that you can fix it is to repeal it in its totality. And then if you have parts of that law that you think are worthy of being passed, you have to do them individually through the legislature. So the only remedy that exists is full repeal. And the state's attorneys that have actually filed this lawsuit, starting with Jim Glasgow of Will County, who's been one of the most predominant people objecting, would say that that's the only way to fix it. But Kwame Raoul and Governor Pritzker will never acknowledge any of that because politically it would be too damaging for them at this stage of the election cycle.
This is the same question for both of you. And Justin, I'm going to start with you. Overall, we know that violent crime is spiking. Crime is spiking on our Chicago CTA system. We've had over 500 this year alone. The crimes are unbelievable. They're ranging from robberies, aggravated assault, battery, sexual assault. And several weeks ago, Tyrone Muhammad from Ex-Cons of Community Social Change, they sent 40 of these community servants out on the CTA platforms and trains for an entire week from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. And they essentially literally protected residents and visitors that were riding the CTA line, many in the south and west sides who don't have any other transportation except the CTA to get back and forth to work from visiting and being with loved ones. I know, Justin, you were there for a few hours. I wanted to just kind of get your thoughts and kind of your key takeaways from spending just a couple of hours there on the CTA platform.
Well, I think it was a good experience, a good thing to see our Black men in Chicago to actually step up and do something, because all the time you hear people talking about it, but you don't see too many being about it and actually stepping up. So it was good. It was a good idea, and I commend Tyrone for doing this. But it's sad that it has to take us to step up, and because where's the support from the city? It should be more resources added to CTA and buses and everything. But we have to step up, and the community has to step up, and we saw that was a good idea, and it was a good thing. But it shouldn't take us to do it ourselves.
Tom, same question for you. What was sort of your key takeaways from spending an evening riding the CTA trains?
That was an interesting experience. I learned a lot, and what I learned is that there's a lot of things that go on in those trains in the wee hours of the morning, and everybody is vulnerable because I didn't see, in the time that I was there, Mark, I didn't see one law enforcement person. And I'm not just saying Chicago Public Police. I'm saying the transit authority has, their own security, et cetera. I didn't see anybody. So maybe that was a unique night, or maybe they were in places that I wasn't. I don't know. But there were several occasions when there were things going on that looked questionable, that Tyrone and there were approximately 40 men with him from his organization. Just their mere presence of being there were things that didn't happen that seemingly would have happened if they weren't. So again, it was an interesting experience to see what the transit looks like, late at night, because as I understand it, a lot of folks in the outside of the city, from some of the, the minority communities, they ride that transit, Mark, coming into town, because a lot of them work in those hotels and a lot of those businesses in midnight shift. So they're riding that transit at those hours of night, and they need to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that several people commented, Tom, that, how safe they felt. And I know you witnessed that too.
I did, yes.
And, it really is remarkable that just their presence, everyday riders and residents, the comfort level that they felt having these guys on, it's remarkable. And it's sad that they're left so vulnerable every single day that they have to take the CTA. We take for granted that we can jump in a taxi or Uber or Lyft or even our own vehicle. But many of these residents in the south and west sides, this is their only form of transportation. While at the same time, crime on these platforms and on these trains is skyrocketing.
Mm.
Really is sad. Justin, I think it's important because we've got a great audience here. What inspired you to create Chi-Town Crime Chasers?
Wow. Well, I could go far back as probably 10 years ago, when I used to have my old Instagram. I used to just always post things that I see happen in front of me. It would be so much things happen in front of me, and I just get excited to pull my phone out and just start recording, and then I post it on my old Instagram page. And a lot of my old friends like, man, you should be some type of reporter or news reporter or something. I'm like, bro, that is not what I'm fit. I ain't trying to go for that. But one day I decided this year, back in May, to try it out. I'm like, well, I want to do something to see if this is going to work. So I started my own page with the help of another person. I named the Chi-Town Crime Tracer CCC. And then I just started going to crime scenes. I had my own. Well, I didn't have my own scanner, but I had a scanner that I used to always listen to on the phone app, and I'll just go to any scene I hear, any shooting scenes, because that's what I really report and chase is shooting crime. And then once I started to build that up, it actually blew up. I didn't even know it's gonna get this huge. And now I'm seeing the more I was going to these scenes and the more followers and support I was getting, the more I was seeing and understanding my purpose of why I had to create this. And I've been seeing a lot of families hurting and stuff, and they're crying out for help, but their voices really isn't being heard. So I found another way to voice their cries, so that not only just the city, but the state and the whole country can see what's really happening in these Black communities and how gun violence is paralyzing these families. And so I use this platform to be the voice of those who can't cry out no more, who's tired and who's hurting and wants to change.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Tom, you've been on a national media blitz over the last week or so, talking specifically about the Safety Act. Fox News just the other day, you were on WGN this morning, ABC7, Fox 32. It's all Safety Act. And you've also been talking about the mandate madness and Governor Pritzker abusing his authority. What would what would the first morning be like as Tom DeVore, Attorney General of the state of Illinois? What would be your top priorities that very first morning that you walk into that office?
Somebody's going to be filing a motion in this now. All of these 60 cases that have been filed by these state's attorneys have been consolidated into Kankakee County. And my first day of office, the Attorney General of the state of Illinois will enter their appearance on my behalf in that case, and we will be taking the position that we agree with the plaintiff. So my administration will no longer be defending the Safety Act. We will be fighting against the Safety Act in conjunction with the 60 states attorneys, that it needs to be repealed in its totality. And then again, I have no problem with the legislature going back and properly vetting and procedurally and substantively talking about things that may be necessary to put together out of that what's left of the pieces of that Safety Act. Day one, the Safety Act, my administration will be going against it to get rid of it. That's 100% certain. The second thing I will do is whoever the governor of the state of Illinois is, I don't care if it's Governor Pritzker or if it's Governor Bailey, they're going to get a phone call from me that's going to make it crystal clear that any administrative orders based upon some alleged proclamation of disaster for COVID that's now 3 years in the making needs to go away immediately, or that governor will be sued by the Attorney General's office on behalf of 12.5 million people in this state. That's the first thing I'm going to do.
Tom, I know that our focus this evening is on the Safety Act, but if I can digress just very briefly, because I know you put out a statement on this the other day, but Governor Pritzker is laying the groundwork, should he be elected to a second term, he's laying the groundwork as it relates to the jab in our kids in schools. Can you talk a little bit about that and what he's doing behind the scenes?
Certainly. I mean, a few weeks ago, the CDC, which is the federal agency, put out, they passed and they now recommend to every state in the nation that the COVID vaccine should be listed as a required vaccination for children. Most states, including Illinois, have a list of vaccinations that children who attend school are required to get unless there is an exemption for medical or religious reasons. So the CDC has no authority over our state to require that, but it can recommend it. And as we all know, Governor Pritzker is always chomping at the bit to follow recommendations from the CDC that he agrees with. So Governor Pritzker went on TV a couple of weeks ago, and he understands that he has to try to patronize the ever-increasing voice that's not satisfied with his mandate way that he tries to govern. And so he said in 3 times within 30 seconds that the legislature of Illinois would have to be the ones that require this vaccination for COVID for school children. The governor is either, I'm going to just say, he's either stupid or he's lying, because in Illinois, the governor does not need the legislature today to do anything, because in the past, the legislature of our state has already delegated the authority to the Illinois Department of Health to add vaccinations for children that they deem necessary and proper. So the only thing that would have to happen is for the governor of our state to direct his head of the Department of Health to propose a new rule through the administrative process to add COVID vaccine as a requirement for school children. Governor Pritzker could start that process tomorrow if he wanted to, irrespective of the legislature, and under our laws, it wouldn't be improper. So it's really important, at least as it relates to the COVID vaccine potentially being required for children, who the governor is, because the governor appoints the head of the Department of Health. And again, Governor Pritzker, it's almost certain in my mind with the things that he's saying about he will follow the recommendations of scientists, that if he is reelected, it's almost a foregone conclusion that he's going to direct them to add the COVID vaccine for school children. Again, it's almost certain in my mind. So it's really important, if people don't want their children to be forced to COVID vaccine for school, that Governor Pritzker is not reelected.
And that's a scary thought. And the fact that he's blatantly lying from the podium during a press conference saying
he's a lawyer, Mark, so I can't imagine he doesn't know that he doesn't need the legislature to add an additional vaccine to the list that the Department of Health requires. If you have a law degree, you should know the answer to that question.
And I might be a little off, but 35, 36 executive orders issued by Governor Pritzker since the start of the pandemic, talking about the health and safety of Illinoisans. One executive order related to the violent crime happening in Chicago. And I think that's absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, he's issued 34 consecutive disasters as it relates to the COVID pandemic. Almost 3 years now, he's been trying to say, even today, as we sit here in November of 2022, he still tries to proclaim that COVID is a disaster in the state of Illinois. It's absolutely absurd that he's still doing that, but he's so drunk on power that he's tried to accumulate for himself, or the appearance of power, that he still continues to do it, when even President Biden got on TV and said that COVID's no longer a disaster in the United States of America. But Pritzker's still doing it because he won't give up that perception of power that he's trying to wield over 12.5 million people. It's tyrannical. I'm sorry.
Justin, I wanted to ask you, what do you do to maintain your sanity? Because it can be incredibly depressing. Every single day you're going to these crime scenes, there's bodies on the ground. There's oftentimes these victims are children and women. What do you do to kind of guard yourself so that you just don't slip into a depression? And after the Safety Act goes into effect on January 1st, we're going to see that those crime scenes only increase. But what do you do to keep yourself healthy and sane?
Yeah, it's very important to make sure you take care of yourself first, because these things, it can be it's depressing to hear about it, first of all, and then it's even more hurting and depressing when you actually there seeing it. You seeing all these families crying and everybody acting out and hurting. It's a different take. It'll hit you different. So I maintain, first of all, I pray. God is my protection. He's my strength. So every day I gotta stay prayed up and keep him keep him first and in with me, because that's how I would be able to. He's called me to do this, so if he's called me to do this, I know he's going to protect my emotions. He's going to protect my feelings and protect my heart. So that's one thing. That's the number one thing. And the number two thing, I hang out every week with I call him my little brother now, but I mentor him. His name's Little Tim, and I just got another boy that I mentor as well. And I hang out with them a lot. We go out, especially to the Sky Zone every weekend. So me spending time with them all the time. There's even been scenes that I've been skipping because I be with these boys so much and I do so much for them. It also helps me keep a stable, good mindset, so that none of these things. And it's probably, and we, even while hanging out with them, I still got to, even if I don't go to these crimes, I still got to be posting and reporting a lot of these shootings. Also, because my partner, he don't do it all the time, so I gotta. We both split shifts, so I do the day shift, whatever. So even while I'm out doing my own thing or hanging out with somebody, I still gotta make these posts. And even while making these posts, I get a lot of videos and pictures and things and it's very, very graphic ones of dead bodies and all these type of things that I see. So yeah, it's still, even without being at the crime scene, it still can make me depressed and get me emotional. But like I said, hanging out and focusing on these boys, the youth, and trying to help them, that's what's going to keep my mind focused and strong.
And I want to be
Hey, Mark, before you go on, I've been reading in the comments over here. There's some cerebral heavyweight that continues to they must be listening to Pritzker and Biden peanut gallery all the time, and they've asked like about 10 times, asked him if President Biden won the 2020 election. Like again, that person has an IQ of 20 over there that's talking. The answer is yeah, he won the election. So move on, find something more intelligent to talk about. So he won the election. Governor Pritzker. Biden won the election. Quit talking about it. Move on. I'm done. Sorry.
It shows you of all the important topics that we're trying to discuss, the Safety Act. Tom, here's
we're talking about real stuff. Justin's in here talking about very important stuff, and I'm not even going to say this person's name. It's not worth it. Like 10 times, ask him to Biden win the election. Like it's really worth talking about. He's the president of the United States. Move on and find something intelligent and serious to talk about. I'm done. Sorry.
No, and I want to be respectful. We're coming up on an hour, and we're going to wrap this up. Tom and Justin, I appreciate you, and I'm going to move over to you for a sort of a quick closing statement. But Tom, I'm going to ask you one last question, and I'm going to give you both just a minute or two to wrap up. But what's your message, Tom, to the independent voter and to the Democratic voter that says, I've never voted Republican before. I've never gotten involved in election before. Oftentimes we see it black and white. I vote straight Republican, I vote straight Democrat. But there's a lot of independents out there that are still trying to figure out. There's a lot of Democrats that aren't necessarily happy with their own Democratic Party. They're saying that I didn't leave the Democratic Party left me because of some of these progressive policies that they don't agree with. What's your message to those Democratic voters and those independent voters that still have not yet made a decision?
That's a good point, and I'm glad you bring that up because I think I've done a pretty good job. You have those that are so far to the left in the Democratic Party that they just don't even listen. And it's the same on the Republican Party. They're so far to the right and don't listen. And there's nothing I think that the 70% of us in the middle, there's nothing we can do about that. So what they need to consider, the independents and the Democrats that are listening, is that what we are witnessing right now is something we should all be concerned about, which is an erosion, a complete erosion in how our government is supposed to work. Governor Biden, I'm on Biden because he's coming tomorrow, you guys. He's going to be in Illinois. Governor Pritzker, who has President Biden coming to see him tomorrow because Governor Pritzker knows he's going to lose. So Governor Pritzker has completely abandoned how we govern in this state. The rule of law, the separation of powers, the respect that he should have for the legislature has been completely destroyed. As a result of this complete erosion of our system of government, crime is out of control in this state, absolutely out of control. Our children have suffered immensely in ways that we'll never be able to probably really appreciate for a long time. Businesses have been destroyed in ways we'll never understand because we got away from governing the way that we're supposed to govern. We as people can disagree about what's the best policies that we should be following. What should we do as a people moving forward? We can disagree and we can figure that out. Kwame Raoul has sat idly by for almost 3 years, almost 4 years now total when we get to the election, and has allowed our system of government to collapse in Illinois. And that should be a danger to all of us. We should think it's a danger, Republican and Democrat, because here's the thing. Right now we have a Governor Pritzker, and maybe you've been okay with some of the things he's been doing policy-wise. But what would you do, I would suggest independents and Democrats who haven't had a problem with Governor Pritzker's policies, what would you do if you would have had a Governor Bailey or a Governor Rauner who would have been issuing these mandates in such a way that you did not like it? What would you have then been doing? Would you have been looking for someone such as myself to defend you against that overreach of authority? That's the conversation that you should be having in your homes, is that we have to follow the rule of law at all costs. And then we work together as people to solve our problems. That's what I'm all about. That's what makes me different than Kwame Raoul, who's using the Attorney General's office to promote social policy. It's a bad idea. And moving forward, we as a people can't do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Justin, and then we're going to wrap it up with Tom. Justin, your closing thoughts on this evening, or ways that we can be supportive of you.
Well, I definitely appreciate this live stream and topic, because we need to have this. It needs to be a conversation first, then action needs to be taken, and hopefully, with this with the election coming up and new leadership, things will change, because the families, with the city, our communities were tired, and we're tired of being tired, and we're tired of hearing the same things, and we're so tired that it's become a normal to us. It's become a norm when we hear a child being shot or a mass shooting. And in fact, just while we was on this live, my partner just updated me of another mass shooting that just took place in Chicago with 4 people shot. So we're tired of seeing this every weekend. We're tired of the lies. We're tired of the cover-ups, and we want to see a change. So, like I said, it starts with a conversation, and hopefully now action needs to be done.
Justin, thank you, and God bless you for all of the work that you're doing. And I couldn't have said it any better. And I'm glad that this is another platform, another venue for you to highlight the amazing work that you do every single day, sharing what's happening in our city, the crime, and bringing light to what's really happening. You're doing God's work. Mr. DeVore,
Mark, before you get into Tom's closing arguments, I think it's important, as I've been moderating this chat in the side with hundreds of comments. Justin, I know you're on a platform that you cannot see the comments, but the expression of appreciation for the service that you're giving the residents of the city of Chicago is absolutely astounding. And you'll need to take a moment to go back and look at this chat. And I know you can't see it, but I think it's important to recognize you with what's going on in the comments over here. And I also, before we get to closing remarks, I think it's also an opportunity for us to allow those in this, as it being a community discussion, to maybe ask a few questions that maybe Tom or Justin or Mark that you can get to, because the level of engagement that is occurring from a community from both sides of the aisle that I'm seeing in this chat to come together, I think it's important that we take advantage of this opportunity that's in front of us right now, and to come together to solve the problems on behalf of the people, because that's what's most important, is the people. So if anyone has a question, as Justin or Tom, as you prepare to talk about some of your closing remarks, if someone has a question, go ahead and type it in the chat, and I'll display them across the bottom, and we'll try to get to a few of those questions. So go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Ryan. And I have noticed the engagement here is unbelievable in these comments. Thank you again. Type in your question, and Ryan will make sure that we see that either for Justin or for Tom. But I just want to reiterate that, Justin, again, when you're able to log on, you're going to be able to see all the love from these comments. Tom, I know we're going to take some questions, and I want to give everyone a few minutes to be able to do that. But in the meantime,
be brief.
Go ahead.
I said I'll be brief.
Okay. No, I just wanted to make sure that you had a time to provide sort of your closing argument. We're going to do this a few more times before Tuesday, but for this evening, I think this is really important. It's been a great idea to put this together tonight, but for this evening, just sort of your closing thoughts and comments.
Well, I'm reading a comment here from, and I'm going to say her name. I hope she's okay with that. Teresa Wells. I want to read what Miss Wells wrote. Mostly people don't know who to vote for because these people that's running don't show up until election time with these broken promises and lies. I get that right, Teresa? And you know what, Teresa? You're 100% correct. Politicians are useless, all of them. And whether or not that I would be one of them that you point out here, I guess we can find out in 4 years. But as to Pritzker and Raul, who's primarily who I'm interested in right now, they fit the category of what you just said. Ask yourselves, each person, Teresa, ask yourself, has J.B. Pritzker or Kwame Raul done anything that you're aware of to show their concern for your community since you elected them 4 years ago? And if the answer is no, you should unelect them. And if you vote for me, and 4 years from now you answer the question the same way, you shouldn't vote for me again. And I would be encouraging you not to vote for me again if I had failed you as someone that you had elected. That's really the answer that I can give you. Now, I can tell you, you put me in that office, I got no problem coming on social media once a month or however often Justin and Mark and Ryan want to do it, and having these exact same conversations that we're having right now about the topics that we are concerned about during that point in time. If you've listened to me, maybe you haven't for the last 2 years, my whole goal has been to engage the community, because the community is the one that knows the problems and can eventually find the answers. Politicians, they are not going to answer anything because most of them are useless. So that's the answer I can give you, Teresa, is that nobody in office right now, Kwame or governor, have done any of that. So you should unelect them. And I'm here telling you that I'm just a guy from the streets that got 2 years ago tired of watching our kids and our businesses suffer and the governor do his tyrannical action. And so I decided to participate. But you hold me to the same standard. You elect me and then you don't see me actively trying to help your communities. Justin will tell you, because Justin will be paying attention. And if Justin's talking bad about me 4 years from now, saying Tom didn't do what he said, then don't vote for me. That's what I can say. So I'm going to leave you with the Safety Act issue. They have sold people a bill of goods with this. Well, the Safety Act is going to allow people that don't have money to get out of jail, right? That's what they're saying. If you don't have money, you have to sit in jail. If you got money, you sit in jail. And so the Safety Act is going to allow people that don't have money to get out of jail. That's what they've sold you all, right? That's what they're trying to tell you, is that, oh, people won't have to sit in jail if they don't have any money. Speaker Welch just did a tweet yesterday. Pull that up, Ryan. Every time I always call him off the cuff like that, I always catch him. Okay, look at this. So this is a tweet from Speaker Welch where he's talking about the man who made the threat to Senator Bailey. And it says if he comes up with the bond, he walks out of jail. Under the Safety Act, this is what I want you guys to understand. Under the Safety Act, a judge would be allowed to keep him in jail. Okay, Ryan. So what the speaker is saying, well, under the Safety Act, the judge can just keep him in jail. And I'm saying to you that they're trying to give you a message that, oh, if you don't have money, then you won't be sitting in jail. This man here, the speaker, saying, well, let's just hold him. What's to keep them from holding whoever they want under the Safety Act? Just hold you in jail. If a poor man right now today, under the current law, is accused of a crime and they set a bail for that person that they can't afford, they can't get out of jail. You guys understand that, right? After the Safety Act goes into effect, the judge doesn't even have to offer them a bond that they might be able to post. The judge just keeps them in jail without any opportunity to post a bond. So how does that help the poor man? Think about that after we get off today. How does it help the poor man to where they can just hold him without offering him any bond? Is it possible he may not be able to post the bond that the judge sets? Yes. Is it possible they can ask the judge to lower the bond to something they can afford? Yes. Under the Safety Act, that all goes away, and the judge just holds them without giving them any opportunity to bond out. How does that help the poor community? It doesn't. You've been misled. Speaker Welch even admitted it to you ignorantly in there that they'll hold somebody. They can just hold anybody they want. That's what the Safety Act says. It's not fair to the poor community. So that's what I had in closing, Mark.
We've got some questions here, Ryan.
Yeah, Justin, I know you can't see the comments, but Sharon is asking, and I'll have to take it off so I can read it in its entirety. But Justin, are you sensing that your friends and neighbors are ready for a change, that are brave enough to maybe vote Republican, or are they experience pressure to continue down a path of the Democratic ballot as they are? And she also indicates, Tom is genuinely an excellent candidate who is for the people. And can you speak to this, of how people on the ground are feeling right now?
To specifically answer, yes, I definitely see that the community is looking forward to new leadership. That's all they talk about every time we talk about a crime or a shooting that took place in the city. Like I said, that everybody's looking at our current officials right now that's in office. What are they doing? What have they been doing? Not much. So they want new leadership. So you always, every time I post or something like that, they always talking about vote Lightfoot out, vote Governor Pritzker out. We need new leadership. And so definitely the community looking forward highly to this next election, to get new people that we can trust and count on to help bring a change.
Justin, you need to make sure to tell the community, and I'm telling them now that listening, even if they make changes, they vote for Darren, they vote for me, they got to just not do that and then go back to whatever they were doing. They need to hold people's feet to the fire and demand that they be involved and participate. And if they do that, they'll be successful.
Correct. I definitely agree.
Let's see, this is from
Missy.
Yeah, Missy. Yeah, Missy.
Just go ahead.
No, I was going to say just the contrary to that, Tom. The politicians need to be engaged equally and not just at election time, and explain how, most people on here don't understand that you currently don't hold an elected office right now. You've been doing this for 2 years and making yourself available to the people. So speak to your opinion on this topic in itself.
Yeah, Missy, we kind of talked about that, but you're exactly right. You never see a lot of politicians until getting close to election time. And you're 100% right. And back in March, April of 2020, when the whole governor's executive order started, and then with the mask and the businesses and the children, I was involved trying to help educate people on what the law says, what it doesn't say, so they could make good decisions, right? I've been doing that for almost 3 years now. But you're exactly right. Politicians, none of them really, for the most part, engage with the community until it's time for them to vote for them again. It's absolutely horrific. And I hope that the public quits tolerating that. I really hope they do.
Well, Tom, Justin, this has been an incredible discussion. It's been an hour and 15 minutes, and it feels like 10. Time went by so quickly. I think the key takeaway from this evening is we have to do this again, right, Ryan? I think the engagement has been incredible. And I'll make sure that next time we leave a little bit more time for questions, because I know we could probably be here till tomorrow morning. Just kind of doesn't seem like anyone is wanting to get off the live here. But I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. I think this was an important discussion specifically around the Safety Act. Justin, again, Chi-Town Crime Chasers, thank you for all that you're doing. We'll continue to follow your work. I encourage everybody, please, to go out and follow Chi-Town Crime Chasers right now. And Tom, as always, my friend, thank you for stepping up and looking forward to Election Day.
Justin,
Thank you,
real
Mark.
quick,
Thank you, Justin. See you later, brother.
Thank you,
Hey,
Tom.
Justin,
Right.
Justin, real quick, you give your time to this. How do people contribute to your page?
Well, for the towards the as far as donations towards the organization and page, I do only have just Cash App and Venmo set up. But right now I do have and I was going to actually speak on this earlier, a GoFundMe link set up for the football team, the youth football team, that one of the boys I also mentor is part of. They are going to Florida in December 4th. And we need to we're trying to raise $25,000. I know I put the goal of 40,000. The goals for this team to travel to Florida for a football tournament. And a lot of these boys on this football team are from Chicago and from various neighborhoods, and some of them are dangerous neighborhoods. But they have a lot of these youth out here have so much talent and gifts that and this is their opportunity they want to show off. And some of these families I know probably cannot afford sending them out. So that's why I created this GoFundMe link. So it is pinned on the top of my page. If anybody could donate, or if you can't donate $1, anything, you can please share to other platforms or organizations that can donate. Our goal is to raise $25,000 by December. But as far as donating towards me and the organization, you can send also to on Cash App. It would be $ Chi-Town Crime Chasers, and same thing for Venmo.
Thank you,
or
Justin.
just message you directly on Chi-Town Crime Chasers if they need that information, right?
Yeah, that's fine. You can definitely message me.
Beautiful. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. God bless you. Good night, and we'll see everyone soon. Take care.